Well, hello there. Today I wanted to talk about Patreon and why I'm closing Patreon down. Quite a few of you have been in contact with me. Now, I've been with Patreon for 7 years and it's been a very good run. But it's time to close it down. So, got another month and I'll be closing it down at the end of the year. So, 2024, there'll be no more Patreon at all. Yes, I will be losing a lot of money. There's quite a few patrons still on there, but it's one of those things where you either stand up for yourself or you don't. And the reason I say this is because even though I've been with Patreon for 7 years, it's been a very, very hard struggle with Patreon. And the reason for that is when I first started doing Patreon, I was able to do giveaways. And I was giving away free miniatures to my Patreons, painted miniatures. And I'd do a monthly competition on Patreon to have a free miniature. But what happened was Patreon decided to stop that and say it's a form of gambling. So by having one of my miniatures sent to you, they treat it like you're winning as a gambling thing, which I suppose is understandable. So I was like, well, okay then, that sucks, because when I was giving away the free miniatures, of course, my patronage was going higher and higher. I was getting more and more people. The most I had at once was 165 patrons. 165 patrons. And that was absolutely amazing. I was bringing in nearly $2,000 a month on Patreon. And then, of course, all of a sudden, Patreon says, "Oh, it's a form of gambling." I was like, right, okay then, that's fine. I'll no longer do the giveaways. And of course, by not doing the giveaways, my patrons suddenly disappeared again, because there's no incentive to stay. I had nothing else I could really give to them apart from my painted miniatures, which was part of the actual patron membership. But the reason why it all come to a loggerhead, and why I'm so absolutely pissed off with Patreon, and why I don't recommend anybody using it, is because Patreon says I can't give away free miniatures to my patrons because it's a form of gambling. And yet you've got slot machine patrons, you have poker patrons, you have so many things to do with like Las Vegas, and all these things. There's so many different patrons out there to do with gambling. So what I'm saying is, Patreon are hypocrites, and it absolutely sickens me that I can't give away one miniature to my patrons, and yet there's sites out there to do with slot machines and gambling. Now, to me, that is the gambling problem, and yet they're not stopping these people. And the reason why is because they're making millions of pounds off them on Patreon. I mean, it's all down to money. End of the day, I've got a Ko-fi account now, and it's my way of starting fresh. Yes, it's going to be a hard struggle to build up my clientele again, but I'm sticking to my guns on this one, because I don't think it's fair that Patreon can decide what's in their best interests, and to actually give one person like me, or you can't do that because that's a form of gambling, and yet they'll let there be poker sites and slot machines as patrons. To me, that's completely wrong, and patrons should be ashamed of themselves for doing that. So that's the reason why I'm closing down my Patreon. So if you are a fan of my site and you want to support me, please go to my Ko-fi and carry on there. You can just follow Ko-fi. It doesn't cost anything, or you can be a £1 member. It's very, very simple. But end of the year, Patreon is getting closed down completely. So thank you everybody for your support on Patreon. It has been a very good 7 years, but it's time for me to stick up for myself and take a stand. So until next time.